Hi, on today's video, I'm working on a Mini Cooper S convertible, just a service, but that engine sounds very loud. It's too loud for my liking. Anyway, get on with it. There's the car. 2012 for a customer, lady customer. Just having a look at the car all around kind of thing, but it's got a broken tail light on one side. There. Someone backed into it, I think. I've just snapped most of the lens just so that it's a bit safer. No lights on. Yeah, that lights on too. Okay, there's a light dashboard. On the dashboard there's a light sign saying one of the lights is out. It's got 89,000 miles on the clock. It's alright. It's fairly low mileage for 2012 vehicle. Yeah. All we got to do is service it. In my services I normally include pollen filter as well. Just throw it in really. Not everyone does, but I like to include it. So yeah, let's crack on. And we'll listen to it once it's serviced, and let's say how much louder or quieter it sounds once it's had an oil change. But we'll see. At least the sun's out, can't complain. So, interesting. This BMW Mini that I'm working on has an oil leak. Quite a serious one as well, it seems. Because if you look, it is literally covered all of the bell housing on the gearbox, so that is not good. So yeah, with the light on you can definitely see much better, so that will have to be investigated further to see where it's actually coming from. Might be something like a turbo oil return line maybe, just I guess. I mean, that's a lot of oil. It's been leaking for a while, that's for sure. I mean, it definitely does look like engine oil rather than brake fluid or anything like that, or clutch fluid maybe. But then if it was clutch fluid, surely it wouldn't drive. Anyway, something else to look into. Whoop whoop. So with this Mini, it's a turbo version, as you can tell. Expansion tank, and that's the intake pipe for the turbo. Now the oil filter housing is buried down there somewhere. Now I've either got to remove the expansion tank, which I've done the bolt for it, but it's leaking. Look, it's just leaking fluid. I barely touched it and it's leaking. The customer did say that they were running a bit low on coolant every now and then, so that will explain the reason. So I think I'll have to remove both. I'll have to remove this inlet hose and the expansion tank, at least move it out of the way. And there's this air duct that seems to go from here and it follows down there, so I'm thinking maybe I'll remove that as well. Maybe, but it depends on how much room I get once I remove these two. So yeah, woohoo! So slightly more issues with this BMW. Remove the inlet hose and found that this piece, which is the piece for the rocker cover gasket, is the breather hose that goes on top of here. well, it was broken. It was literally just hanging off like this. So that's very helpful. And this little sleeve here was buried in there like that. So which means it wasn't even on there properly, clearly. And also the vacuum line for the turbo actuator, which is this little hose here, was literally just lying across there, so it wasn't even plugged in. So she basically had no turbo. She's been driving around with no turbo, not even realising. Such underpowered car without the turbo on. And obviously we've got this coolant leak as well now. So it's quite serious leak. Either it's not pushed in properly, or the actual something's leaking, but I'll find out in a minute. And still need to further investigate this oil leak, which is down there somewhere. Woohoo! So still with this BMW Mini Cooper S. So just I have to remove the inlet hose for the turbo across there, and the expansion tank to be able to gain access to the oil filter housing, which is here, very conveniently. Not. And this hose that's leaking, I don't really see anything wrong with it. It's not necessarily broken or anything, but I think it's just the angle, the way it sits, that's making it leak, maybe. Which is strange. I don't see anything on the expansion tank. I mean, I've cleaned it a little bit, but don't really see anything wrong with it. There's nothing cracked, broken, or anything like that. So, a bit of a strange one, really. But clearly someone has been here before, because that clip there isn't sitting properly at all. It's definitely in a wonk. Maybe that's leaking too. It is possible. So the earlier on I was saying the vacuum line, this is the vacuum line that was not plugged in, so clearly the actuator wasn't working, so she had no turbo. And not only that, there's clearly a leak in the inlet hose, and the mass airflow sensor is actually between the turbo and the air filter housing. Therefore it would have definitely leaked, and it would have calculated air that's coming in from outside, so therefore it would have thrown up all sorts of fault codes, which it did at some point, and then someone come and cleared it, and apparently hasn't come back since. But it was only a matter of time they would have come back again. Woo! So coming back to this oil leak that I thought was an oil leak, because of the location of the oil filter housing, I think that where someone done an oil change, just didn't clean up after themselves, that's why it looked like it was leaking. I mean, it's possible that it's still leaking, but it is very in line with the leak that I thought was a leak directly below the filter housing. And there's also a oil cooler of some kind just right next to the filter housing there. You can just about see the aluminium there, so it's possible that that's what's that might be leaking also, but it doesn't really look like it is. I had a look up there. It seems quite dry. Mostly the oil is localized to further down the bottom half of the engine, and looking at the sump gasket, it seemed fine. I didn't really see any leaks there, so I can't really see anything else leaking other than the housing itself. The oil housing, maybe oil filter housing, it's possible that that's leaking. I mean, without actually cleaning it all up, fitting it all back together, and then letting the drive sort of letting the car, letting the engine even idle, and see if it leaks anywhere else, or anything that is close to the air filter housing. Oil filter housing, correct the first time around. Anyway, yeah, crack on. Well, what a difference on this Mini after the oil change. so much quieter. Wow. Definitely needed an oil change. It was pitch black. It sounds so much nicer. Yep. Now we've fixed the well, temporary fix on this breather hose connecting onto the turbo inlet pipe. Coolant leak. We cleaned up the bottom pipe, put it all back together. We've just got to keep an eye on that. If it carries on leaking, then it means I've got to get that bottom hose replaced. Oil air filter was filthy. You can literally see it was terrible. It had like lots of leaves and all sorts of stuff on it. Oil, all sorts of crap. So it's not been changed for a long time. That was the air filter actually, not oil filter. Oil filter also filthy. State of it. It's black. I don't think there's any bits in it necessarily, but it's just filthy. It's not been changed for a long time, that oil. And use the whole bottle of brake and clutch cleaner to clean up the bottom half where the oil filter housing is located down there below this pipe. It causes a problem where once you remove the oil filter itself, all the oil just leaks straight down sort of along the side of the engine. So I think that was the reason why there was loads of oil underneath the car. It wasn't necessarily a leak. Someone just didn't clean up after themselves on the last oil change, and it's been like that for a long time. That's why it looked like it was leaking, but it's possible that it's still leaking. There is a possibility, but I've cleaned up everywhere. All around the rocker cover gasket was all covered in oil, so I've cleaned everything as much as I could. So next time it comes back, we'll see if there's any other issues with it. That's it for this one. And I don't think there's any other issues. Oh yeah, well, the back light is broken, but main stealer wanted 200 quid just for one back light. I think it was like eBay job, 40 quid. I can't remember if it was second hand, but the customer was like, I just want to spend as less as possible. So yeah, it's all good, can't complain. And yeah, all sorted. On to the next one.